and gentlemen, and the reason why I say gentlemen is because, Max and Joy, is Max here? Called it, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see you all for the Daily Power Parsha. It is fantastic to be here with you. Live from my son's bedroom, the one with the bowling pin. Let's explore some themes for today from the Torah. Remember, the Torah is our guide, our wisdom, and there's a lot that we can learn from the Torah on a daily basis. So let's jump right in. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to kick things off with a discussion of where we ended up yesterday, actually. Let's see. We talked about, here we go. Yep. We talked about the sabbatical year, the Shemitah year. And we said that Shemitah year, sabbatical year, is an exercise in faith, a full year in which you're not working your land, right? Your whole land, which is your investment, your livelihood, you're not working it. Furthermore, not only you're not working it, it's not exclusively yours. Anyone can eat from your field. It's the other guys as much as it's yours. How am I going to eat? How am I going to sustain myself and my family? Support this year. We have trust in God. We have faith in God, and that is the cycle of 7 years to kind of instill within us and feed this faith in God. As I mentioned yesterday, the Leviticus chapter 25, the second of our double readings, addresses the person's question. If you would say, what will I eat in the 7th year? God says, don't worry, I'm going to give you my blessing. I will command my blessing. Don't make God small and you big. Right? That's what the Torah is saying. Sometimes we think that we're big and God's small. So if we don't take care of it, then no one's going to take care of it. Right? Because God, who can trust? Who can rely on God? Me, I have to rely on put the world's weight on my shoulders. And the Torah says you got to flip the script. The opposite is true. God is big and we're small, right? We're the ones that we don't know today, tomorrow, yesterday. We don't know, what's coming or going. God is the one that can be relied upon. So that is the essential message of Shemitah, as I said. Take a look at 25. This is chapter 25, verse 25. This is really interesting. Take a look. If your brother becomes destitute and sells some of his inherited property, his redeemer, who is related to him, shall come forth and redeem his brother's sale. I said yesterday, last time, that the land of Israel was apportioned to each tribe. Every tribe got a section of land. Picture, as I said yesterday, the United States of America. Each state has its own constituency, right? Georgia, Alabama, Florida, everyone's got its own territory. In the land of Israel, the ancient land of Israel, every tribe was given its section of land. 12 tribes, 12 portions. Within each tribe, there were different families, right? The 12 tribes, just so you know, the 12 tribes literally means they were descendants of one of the 12 sons of Jacob. So that's how the tribal delineation happened. It went by paternal lineage, went by the father. And essentially, within each tribe, there were families. It wasn't just one family. There were families, cousins, whatever you want to call them. Every family got a certain amount of the land. They divided it by number of people. That's who got the land. So what happens, verse 25 tells us, if somebody needs the cash? They fall on hard times. The investment didn't work out. They bought MySpace when it was, remember MySpace? Right? They bought, what else? They bought AOL back when AOL was sending out those CDs with 5 free hours of internet. Person, God forbid, becomes destitute, has to sell some of the property that he inherited to cash out. He needs the cash to eat. The Torah says that is not a desired state of affairs. That's not ideal. What is the ideal? First of all, the ideal is that everyone should have what they need and no one should fall on hard times to have to sell property. But what should happen in this case? The Torah immediately tells us the solution, or what should happen. The person should have a redeemer. Redeemer means someone who's going to help them. And who is it? Someone who is related to him, a relative, should come forth and redeem his brother's sale. What does it mean, redeem his brother's sale? Buy the property back. So let's say the person sells the house. Let's just give a round number. $100,000. They needed the cash. They sell it for $100,000. The relative should come, buy it back, pay the $100,000 to the buyer, and then gift it back to the relative. No charge. That's love, right? Imagine if families operated like this. I got your back. You fell in hard times. You should have come to me first. You didn't. Don't worry, I'll help you out now. This is what Torah is telling us. It's a beautiful... Oh, take a look at the next verse. And if a man does not have a redeemer, no family, no one stepping forward, but he gains enough means to afford its redemption. In other words, after a few years, he gets the money to buy his old home back. Now in America, you say, tough luck, right? You sold it, you're done. If the seller wants to, if the new owner wants to sell it back, fine, but they don't have to. But in Jewish law, it's a little bit different because it's their ancestral territory. It's part of the family plot, the family land. There's a desire to reunite the original owner with the land. So what should you do? He shall calculate the years for which the land has been sold and return the remainder to the man to whom he sold it, and then he may return to his inheritance. In other words, you don't buy it back full price. It's kind of prorated, right? So let's say, because remember, it would go back at the, okay, as I said yesterday, all sales revert back on the 50th year, right, at the Yovel, the Jubilee year. So imagine this is 10 years away from the Jubilee year. So the buyer knew anyway that they were only buying it for 10 years. So they didn't give $100,000. That's a bad number. Let's say they gave $10,000. They gave $10,000 for 10 years because they know in 10 years it's going back either way. So we have three scenarios. The guy needed the cash. He needed 10 grand. He sells the house for 10 years, gets the 10 grand. Scenario number one is the relative buys it back immediately. Gives the other guy the 10,000, gives it back to the guy who owned it. Scenario number two is that there's no redeemer. There's no one else that saves the day. But he himself, 2 years later, comes up with the money. How much does he buy it back for? Not 10,000. 8,000. Prorated. The guy lived in it for 2 years. He got 2 years of worth. So you don't give him 10,000 to get it back. You give him 8,000. Does it make sense what I'm saying? As far as how the money's going? Okay. Right? Let's continue verse 28. But if he cannot afford enough to repay him, in other words, no one came to his rescue and he can't afford it either, his sale shall remain in the possession of the one who purchased it until the Jubilee year. The guy keeps it all 10 years. 10,000, 10 years. And then in the Jubilee year, it shall go out and revert to his inheritance. Remember, you don't sell land, you don't sell territory in Israel back in the day permanently. It's all on condition, it's all a known, accepted reality that on the 50th year, whenever that is, everything's going back. I want to share with you, now you know the law, I want to share you the mystical dimension. It's always good to study Torah on multiple dimensions. So let me bring you in to the Kabbalah of what we just studied. But one detail, not the whole detail, I'll give you one taste of it. Verse 25. Sorry, let me do the English. If your brother becomes destitute and sells some of his inherited property, what does it mean spiritually? If a person becomes spiritually impoverished, not physically impoverished, but spiritually impoverished. And because of that fact, because maybe they're going through a crisis of faith, or they're going through a challenging time that challenges their spiritual fortitude. Because of that, they sell some of their inherited property. What is the inherited property? We say there's a verse in Deuteronomy, Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kihila Yaakov. The Torah that Moses commanded us from God is a morasha, is an inheritance for us. We call it our inheritance. Torah it's a gift also, but it's also an inheritance. It's our Yerusha, it's our inherited property, so to speak. So what is the verse saying spiritually? If you see somebody, a brother or sister, not biologically only, but a fellow, who falls in a crisis of faith and because of that says, I'm done with this, and sells their inherited property, their connection with their spiritual faith. So what does the Torah tell us to do? His Redeemer, who is related to him, we're all related, shall come forth and redeem his brother's soul. In other words, reunite that person with their heritage. We should never be okay with somebody who abandons their beliefs. Listen, I'm not advocating forcing someone, right? It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody's going through a difficult time. Our job is to help them find the strength and be reconnected with the things that control and spiritually. Physically is the simple meaning of the verse. Spiritually is the deeper meaning of the verse. So, in short, our obligation to our fellow is not only to make sure that the other person eats and has clothing and has education and has a roof over their heads. Our obligation is also that people have the spiritual tools that they need to withstand the challenges of their lives and of our times. So that's what it's about. The Rebbe once gave the analogy when it comes to encouraging others in their spiritual path. Not forcing, but encouraging. Being a positive guide, mentor, teacher, whatever. Some people say, what is it my business? It's not my business. Let a person discover, choose, believe, or not believe, however they wish. Why should I get involved? The Rebbe gave an example. What if a person, God forbid, sees a house burning? Their neighbor's house. Would they not want to rush in and save the people who live in that house? Would that not be the right thing to do? Yeah, you could fold your arms and say, not my problem. Let them do whatever they want. We live in such challenging times. There's a fire burning. When I say fire, translate that however you want. Yeah, the world is burning in a certain sense on every level. It's very difficult. I'm not doom and glooming. I'm just saying there are a lot of challenges. So, and people need strength and they need fortitude and connection and grounding and inspiration and meaning and purpose, all these things. So our job is to care about the other. To give a person their own, say, it's not my issue, it's their personal issue. That's not caring. I mean, it sounds like respecting personal autonomy, but on the other hand, it's also not so much caring. So our job is to reach out to the other and to be there for them physically, when they need money, when they need a home, when they need a roof over their heads, and also spiritually. Okay, let's take a look at the third reading, which is corresponding to today, which is Tuesday. So take a look at something very interesting. I want to share with you one or two more insights. Torah, I'm just going up and down. The Torah talks about the difference between whether a person sells a house in a walled city or a house in an unwalled city. In ancient Israel, there were certain cities that were fortified, which means that there was a wall around the city. Those were considered to be like the big cities. The big cities had walls around the city. A lot of people, like the metropolis, so to speak, in those times, had walls around the cities. Kind of more like agricultural towns, they were open cities. So the Torah distinguishes between selling a house in a walled city, what are the terms of that sale, when can you get it back, houses in open cities, fields in open areas. It's the field itself, not a house, but a field. Okay. Fine. I don't want to get into that. There are insights on that, but I want to focus on another thing. I just want to tell you what it's talking about in today's reading. Look at verse 35. Once again, about tzedakah, giving. If your brother becomes destitute and his hand falters beside you, that's a very powerful expression. His hand falters. In other words, it's not working out. He's not able to make ends meet. And he's next to you. In other words, it's your brother. Not literally even, like not necessarily biologically. Your fellow person. You shall support him, whether a convert or a resident, so that he can live with you. This becomes the subject of a very, very incredible, just extraordinary law in Jewish law. The extent of tzedakah is giving to the other person to the point that they are able to live with you. I don't mean necessarily in the same house, but I mean live on a level that is livable. To not just give them in a way that makes you feel like you did something, but to support that person in a way that really takes care of their needs. Just like you have your needs, so you should take care of their needs. The Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, writes a very strong letter. This is going back 200 plus years, 250 years. 200 years. Whatever, give or take. The Alter Rebbe, living in Russia, was very supportive of the Jewish communities that were struggling in the Holy Land. You know, this, notwithstanding all the travels of the Jewish people, Jews were always living in Israel. Maybe just a few communities, but there was a constant presence of Jews in Israel. At that point, 200 plus years ago, the communities in Israel were very impoverished, very poor. It was very difficult to live there. The Alter Rebbe in Russia wasn't also a very lucrative, it's not like the Jews in Russia were rolling in it. You know, it was the time of the Tsars, and life there was very difficult as well. But the Alter Rebbe had an ongoing campaign to collect tzedakah, collect money, and send it to Israel. In fact, he was thrown in prison for these efforts. There were trumped up charges against him, charges of high treason. It wasn't a simple charge. It wasn't a misdemeanor. This was a capital offense. Why? I mean, it wasn't, but it was portrayed, until the truth came out, it was portrayed as a capital offense. You see, Israel then was under the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Ottoman Empire, and the Turks, the Ottomans, and the Russians were at war. And so the word reached the Tsar saying, this rabbi, prominent rabbi, the founder of Chabad, Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi, he is supporting the Turkish government in the war against Russia. And you can imagine, they took him to jail. 53 days later, he was exonerated of all charges, because that's not what he was doing. He was supporting Jewish communities. He wasn't supporting the government. He wasn't supporting the enemy. He was supporting Jewish families living in the Holy Land, and they were able to see that. And he was released fully after that. But here's the point that I want to mention. In one of his letters to his community and to the communities in Russia, the Alter Rebbe writes, I've been reaching out for these funds, and the word I'm getting is it's difficult. Times are difficult. You know, we don't have enough to support our own families. We can't send off to others. And the Alter Rebbe said, you're mistaken. Because what you consider to be, you know, what you can't afford is very different than what they can't afford. In other words, if you give tzedakah, right, and support this cause, maybe you won't be able to get the first cup brisket for Shabbos. I'm paraphrasing. Maybe you won't be able to have the gefilte fish and the salmon and the sushi salad at the same meal. And that to you means that I can't give it away because I need this I need this. But when you're talking about someone's basic bread on their table, the needs are not aligned. You have to give, even if it means that you come down a notch in your quality of life. If someone else is not even on that basic level, you have to help them. That's what it means your brother should live with you. It means not on a different level. where you're okay here and you can't give because otherwise you won't be able to be over here even though this person is struggling down here. It means to make it to the point where they're living with you. In other words, akin to you. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to get the finest delicacies in the mansion. Halavai, listen, we should all be living in mansions. Let us say amen. But what it means is sometimes when we think about giving and what we can or can't give, there's a big imbalance between the other's needs, and I say needs like basic needs, and our wants. Well, what we would call like the about living with you, which is about creating somewhat of an equality. Judaism, as I mentioned in the last few days, is not about socialism. It's not a socialistic economic model. It's yours. The Torah encourages us to do the right thing, right? It's 100% yours. You can keep it if you want, but here's what God says. Here's what I'm telling you. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to give tzedakah and support good causes. Let's finish off with one more insight as we read the last few verses here. The second to last verse of our daily reading says, "Don't give money with interest, nor food with increase." Basically, here's the prohibition against interest, charging interest on a loan. Okay, with apologies to banks and other lenders, Torah says that interest is not kosher. What's the problem with interest? Interest is understood to be something that could be suffocating for the borrower, right? You're in a place of need, a desperate place, which is why you're borrowing, and now there's a hole in the bottom of the cup, and it's continuously leaking. The interest is accruing, and it might be impossible for the person to climb out of that. So Torah says like this: if you're lending, if you're giving, give. If you're lending, lend without interest. A person might say, well, if I'm lending without interest, why should I lend? Why should they get my money and I not make anything on it? So the next verse, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan to be a God to you. God says, you know what the reward is? Number one, doing the right thing. Second of all, I'm with you. I got your back. I'll make sure that you get what you need. I'll take care of you. You help take care of someone else, and God says, I'm the guy who took you out of Egypt. I can pull this off. Don't worry. You're not going to go unrewarded. In the Hebrew word for interest is neshech. Neshech. I'm highlighting it right there. Bin neshech means with neshech. Neshech is, nun shin chaf, is interest. You know what neshech also means? A snake bite. Why is it, it's the same letters, same word as snake bite. Why is it a snake bite? Because what happens when a person is bitten, God forbid, by a snake? The snake releases the poison. In the moment, you feel a little bit of a pinch, but not you. Somebody feels a little bit of a pinch, but it's not lethal yet. But what happens? Slowly, the poison enters the system, enters the bloodstream, reaches the vital organs, and causes death. It's something that it takes a little while for it to bring about that paralysis and demise, God forbid. And the same thing is true with interest. It's a little pinch, but it builds up to the point that it could become crushing and suffocating. Look, I'm sure I don't need to mention this, that it's we're not speaking of things that are like fantastic, like fantasy, like not realistic. We know about crushing debt. We know about how difficult it is to get out of debt when debt is compounded with interest. Right? We know the financial crisis. I mean, we know what goes on. The question is, well, what's the best solution? Torah says, don't charge interest. I know what this would mean for industry, that things would shut down, and why would banks do anything? I don't have an answer for that, but I'll tell you, this is Torah's view of ethical lending. Ethical lending means that you're not punishing the guy that you're trying to help. That lending is not from a revenue perspective. I'm not lending to make money. I'm lending to help. I'm lending for a mitzvah. So I shouldn't be profiting off of a mitzvah. It should be done out of goodwill. You want to make money? There are many ways to make money. Don't make money off of someone else's poverty. Now, what about a business loan? That's something else. A business loan would be more of an investment. So a business loan, if it's structured as an investment, then you can make you can make profit off of the profit. You can get a percentage of the profits and share in the success of the business. But to make interest off of someone who's in a space of need, the Torah says don't confuse business with mitzvah, right? Don't confuse business and pleasure here. Business is business, but this is a mitzvah. A mitzvah, we should run to do a mitzvah with pleasure. I want to help you out. I'm not trying to hurt you as I help you. To hug someone and then stab them in the back, that's not right. Does it make sense? Yes? Okay, that's pretty much what I have. Let's now open it up. I saw, Karen, you raised your hand, so I'm going to stop the share. Go ahead, unmute.
Yeah, so I'm glad you qualified for business because,
Yeah.
I always think back to the Merchant of Venice,
Yeah.
and that it's such a powerful play and indictment of Jews, and how it was used against them.
Yes.
Because they did loan money and they did collect interest.
Correct.
And how that was twisted. And so I know that the Torah is not indicating that it's not indicating a prohibition against a business deal.
Correct.
But it's these very business deals that, my gosh, since the beginning of time has really come back to bite the Jew.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, you raise a very good point. I have a friend in New Jersey who did a symposium, a legal symposium, with judges and lawyers in wherever he lives in New Jersey. And the topic was the Merchant of Venice in U.S. law and in Jewish law. And I thought I would love to do that one day, to get, some Torah perspective, go through the story and kind of, break down different legal dynamics and pieces, and have a panel of professional judges and lawyers speak about it, and then share the Jewish perspective. We could talk about the anti-Semitic, angle on it, all that stuff. I think it would be a very rich topic to speak about. But you raise an excellent point. I think historically the reason why Jews were money lenders is because essentially they were locked out of any other business, and that was the only thing that the government and the church essentially allowed them to do, because the church also, it forbade charging interest. So Jews were kind of, they were pushed to be the money collectors. That again, it's a big topic to discuss. What would Jewish law say about that exactly, and what the context. But I'll tell you, the notion of the difference between a loan and an investment, even today, there's a loophole. When I say loophole, I have to be very careful how I say this. I don't mean but if it's structured as an investment, you can charge interest, right? So even a personal loan, if it's structured and it's an investment, interest can be taken. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't do the mitzvah. I'm just saying if the context is investment, then that's a different thing.
I'm all in for that course. I think it would be that would be so amazing, because it really is.
He did it actually as a one evening thing, like a 2-3 hour seminar.
Yeah, even 2-3 hour.
He got a ballroom. He got dinner, and then this discussion. It's very cool. I'm going to speak with him. He's a good friend from back in the day in yeshiva. We studied together in Morristown, New Jersey. Guy, so he has a lot of experience with. I think he does it every year. Like a Jewish legal symposium. Yeah, different topics. Yeah. Like every year is like a creative topic. It's cool. So I like to do that. I think it has a broad interest, like a general interest, even for non-lawyers, right? It's got the anti-Semitic piece, it's got the legal interesting dynamic, and then of course for lawyers, with the CLE credits and whatnot, there's an upside. But yeah, Merchant of Venice is definitely one example of many of this. What would we call it? Trope or whatever it is. This this painting Jews as with a certain brush.
I think too that it would appeal to people that may not study Torah, that might not find the relevance of studying Torah, but when you tie it into literature,
yes,
and Shakespeare
Yeah.
and and hit, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it has some more universal appeal.
For sure. No, I agree with that. Yeah. Okay, so now you're encouraging me to actually go ahead with it. All right. Coming soon to a virtual ballroom near you, because who knows what's going on here. All right, so that's all I have for today. So what do we talk about? We talked about the notion of helping each other out. I think that was pretty much the theme that ran through today's points. Number one, if you see something, do something. Right? Somebody falls on hard times, has to sell their home. Our first thought should be, how do we help get them back into their home? Right? That's the right thing to do. In ancient Israel, there was another motivation to keep the land with the tribe. Fine, I get that. But in general, we should help each other out. Spiritually also, if somebody sells out their heritage and kind of has walked away from their faith, let's start a conversation. What's going on? How can I help? How can I help inspire or be there for you? We always should be there for the other, physically, spiritually. We talked about the notion of, what else we talked about? We talked about the notion of tzedakah being helping a person live like a mensch, and not say, well, I can't give because the luxury I need and you should have nothing. We should give in a way that's getting a person their basic needs and us maybe compromising a little bit on our luxuries. And the last point I mentioned was about interest. How interest, a person says, well, why shouldn't I get interest? The Torah starts from the other way around. Why should you get interest? If it's a mitzvah, don't penalize the person for your mitzvah. It's a mitzvah, help them out. It should be about them, not about you. So do the mitzvah, help a person out, help a cause out. It's not about the profit off of it. There's spiritual profit anyway. If it's a business, as I mentioned parenthetically, then it's something else. You can invest in a business and share in the profits. That's not a problem. But if you're helping someone out, like on the level of tzedakah, like a tzedakah loan, then it should be about that. And by the way, I can't believe I didn't mention this before. This is like the manifestation of this, or the application of this in Atlanta. To this very day, there is right now operating JIFLA. JIFLA is an organization in Atlanta, JIFLA, the Jewish Interest-Free Loan Association. There is literally the Jewish community. It's connected with Federation and all wonderful organizations in the city. JIFLA is an organization that will give interest-free loans. And where does it come from? Right here. Our today's Torah reading. The mitzvah to give interest-free loans. It's supported by donors that help, that give that seed money. And of course, there's there are mechanisms to try to get it back and whatever, but it's not penalizing people. I'm sure it's capped at a certain amounts, and they look at certain things. I'm sure they're careful, on a responsible way. But it's about the mitzvah. You should know there's also loans for education that are interest-free in the Jewish community. There, JELF, Jewish Education Loan Fund, another local organization. So there are tremendous organizations that are helping with this mitzvah in mind.
My niece, actually in Los Angeles, just recently got a loan from the organization because she lost all of her. She had all these odd jobs that she was supporting her that went away, and she got a loan from a Jewish organization.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Interest free.
Baruch Hashem. Yeah. Thank God. All right, Max. Great to see you. Tell Joy we missed her. We saw her at the beginning.
Yes, she had to go back to work.
Oh, no worries. Okay.
Thanks.
Great to see you.
See you.
You're looking good. Stay healthy. Stay strong. Karen, great to see you. Stay healthy. Hope the whole mishpacha is healthy. Yeah? Everyone's good? Okay, good.
Can I get some peaches this afternoon?
Say it again?
Did I get some peaches?
Yeah. We've had a lot of people come by, so it's thinning out, but there's still some to get, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would come today. Come while the picking's good.
Okay, because I saw some up there and I went by today, but I didn't know if they were...
Totally. So we're usually home. Today there's a Lag BaOmer parade at 4:30.
Right.
So if we're not home, you could still pick. If we're not home, it'll be good to see you, but either way, we have two fruit pickers, an orange one that doesn't telescope and a red one that does telescope. Use the red one. It goes to 12 feet, and it's all available. And we even have some picked that are on the table on our porch that are ready to go if you want to just take from there as well. So
Okay.
you can take the peaches that are already picked. You can pick your own peaches. Karen, you can pick peaches, right?
I love doing that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun actually. And I heard there's a shortage in Atlanta with peaches, because I heard the stores don't have, which is I thought is strange because we have literally hundreds of them.
Yeah, they're rotting on the trees probably.
So you only have one tree that produces all these peaches?
I'm telling you, there's each branch has like 100 peaches on it, and it's literally we probably had I'm going to say upwards of 1,000 peaches. And I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy. It's not like a massive tree, but it's at least 600-700 at least.
If I come to pick peaches, do like I climb up in the tree, or is there
No, I have a thing, a peach. Yeah, it telescopes out 12 feet. Listen, you hold it up, right? So that's like 6-7 feet, right? Another 12 feet, you can get 18 feet in the air. Now it's hard. You have to balance it or whatever it is. At the edge of it, it has like hooks on one side of it and a little bat, like a foam thing. So you just hook it on, you pull it down. It's very addicting. It's very once